Hey everybody, welcome to 101. We are so thankful to have you here, and we are just excited about the thought that we've got new folks ready to join up with PromiseLand. And usually I am there with you in person. It just so happens this is the one week that I'm not able to be there, and I'm very much sorry for it. But you are surrounded with some awesome people. Our team there is going to be taking care of you and answering all of your questions, introducing the rest of the staff, and we hope that you enjoy the meal. And I'm just going to share with you over the next few minutes some very important things about PromiseLand, and we want you to get a good picture of what it's like to be a member here at PromiseLand. And we feel like this class is necessary because people come from all different kinds of backgrounds, and if you stepped into PromiseLand, that doesn't mean that you are used to our kind of church. Some of you are not used to any church at all. Some of you may come from a Baptist background or Catholic background or Episcopal or Presbyterian or Lutheran or Church of Christ. The list goes on and on and on, and basically what that means is there's that many different kinds of normal, and at PromiseLand we have our own normal, and we want to share with you why we do what we do. We think it's important, and we're going to be very clear. We hope that after we share with you the intent of our church and the reason why we do the things that we do, we would love for you to join up with PromiseLand today. In fact, in about an hour from now, you're going to get that opportunity to simply join PromiseLand. And if you leave here today with some questions, we're more than happy to answer those questions either today with the team that's there, or you can email me on the city, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. We just simply want to share with you the vision of what God's doing here, and we would love for you to jump in and join us. So let me tell you a little bit about the history of myself and a little bit about the history of our church. That way you can get a picture of where we came from. I was born in Austin and raised here in this area. I actually grew up in Buda, Texas, just up the road, and went to Hayes High School and graduated from there in 1994, and then went to Texas State and got a degree in marketing. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life. I got a business degree in marketing. I was passionate about that. I liked that. But there was always this yearning inside of me for full-time ministry as well. And so my pastor had told me, hey, you need to go get your degree and see where God leads, and just allow this local church to help you with your spiritual walk, your discipleship, and your church leadership training. And so that happened at the beginning of my college experience. And so while I was at school at Texas State, I was also youth pastor of the PromiseLand Church in Austin. And that's the church I grew up in. And I was a very busy guy, a very busy college student, and was just busy doing work, busy doing the work of God, and dating a couple girls. One of them in my junior year of college was Erica Lynn Crocker. I met her at church, and we started dating, and then we were married 3 weeks after I graduated from college, and we were married in Austin, and we lived there after I graduated from college for 1 year as I was a project manager for my dad's construction company. And then we moved to New Mexico for a couple of years, and we lived in Taos, New Mexico. And I helped a little bitty church out there, and I was a part-time ski instructor, I was a waiter, I was a line cook, I helped weld, I had my own mobile car wash company, and I was a custodian. I mean, I did everything to make ends meet. We were poor, but we were having a wonderful time. Anyway, we moved back to the Austin area in 2001, and I became the children's pastor of the PromiseLand Church there in Austin. And then in 2003, my pastor came to me. His name is Kenneth Phillips. And he's still the pastor in Austin. He's been there for over 45 years as the pastor of PromiseLand. And he came to me in my office and he said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a church in San Marcos, and I would love for you to be a part of it if you would like to. And I said, absolutely. I have a passion for San Marcos. I went to school here and all that. And so we came down in January of 2003, and we started having church services here in San Marcos on Friday nights. And we called them Friday Night Fellowship. And I was the sound guy. I helped set up the sound equipment, and Pastor Phillips would preach. And we just have church. There was about 30 people of us that were joining us at that time at the very beginning of 2003. And we just had church. It was very simple. We just invited people to come, and the presence of God was so strong in those meetings, and many people came to know God. And about 3 months into it, he came to me and said, okay, I think maybe you're being called to this location to be the pastor, and I want you to really pray about it and think about it. And so I did, and I went back to him. I said, I feel like I am called to pastor here in San Marcos. And so keep in mind, the people that were with us on Friday nights, they had no idea that I possibly was the pastor. I was just the guy over on the soundboard, and they were mesmerized by the amazing preaching of Kenneth Phillips. He's an amazing preacher, and they were thinking possibly he was going to pastor the church, or maybe his son Randy Phillips would pastor the church, or maybe another guy. They didn't know I would, and so it made me very nervous, honestly. But one Friday night, Pastor Phillips came to me. He said, I want you to preach next week, and I want you to really pray about it. This is going to be the vision casting message of this church. So I want you to preach that message, and then the following week, we're going to announce you as the pastor, and we're going to announce you have elders of the church, and then you guys are going to be launched as your own church. And so I went that week and began to pray and fast and read the Bible and just ask God, hey, I need a message from you. This can't be my message. This has got to be a message straight from you. And I just prayed about it, and God gave me a message that it was so powerful. It obviously wasn't from me, but it was such a strong message, such a core message, that I'm actually going to share it with you. That's kind of the whole point of today, is this message was the foundational message of this church. And it's being carried out. And so I preached that Friday night, and it was okay. The Word of God was awesome. The delivery wasn't all that great. But the next Friday night, he says, we're going to announce your pastor tonight, and it is Robin Steele, come on down. So I went out from the sound booth, and I came down to the front, and he anointed me as the pastor of the church. And then he called up 4 men, and he anointed them as the elders of the church. And then he basically said, this is your church, take it and go. And whatever you guys want to do, it's your church. So we did. We took it from that point, and we just dove all in. And there was, at this point, about 50 of us that were calling PromiseLand San Marcos home. And we began to meet on Sunday nights at Texas State University in the Alkek Teaching Theater. And we ended up meeting there for 2 years. And we didn't move out of that facility until 2005, where we found this property where we're currently at. And those 2 years were just amazing. God did some amazing work there at Texas State, and in small groups and outreach projects and just all kinds of things. God began to really multiply the work here. And we went from those 30 then to 50 members, and then in 2 years we were up to a couple hundred members, and we really felt like God was moving us to build our own building, have our own property. And we just began to give financially and pray and fast and seek God for how He wanted us to move from Alkek to the next place. And God opened up this property, and it was 10 acres, and it was just the empty student center. That's all that was here. And it was empty. There was no chairs or walls or anything. And they wanted $1 million for the property. And $1 million was $900,000 more than what we had. I mean, we had like save and give and sacrificially and pinched pennies, and we had $100,000 in the bank, which we were proud of. We thought that was awesome. But $1 million loan was way out of the picture, and so we negotiated and we prayed again and we asked banks for loans, and we tried every angle. We really felt like God was going to do something, and He did. He made a way, and they lowered the price a little bit to $850,000, and banks started. We got rejected by 6 banks, and finally the 7th bank said yes. And with all these stipulations, we got into the building, and then we remodeled the whole thing by ourselves. And we just sweated and bled and worked hard and built this church physically and spiritually from the ground up. And that was in 2005. And then our church began to grow exponentially, and we doubled within about 8 months. We had 400 people showing up on the weekend, and then over the next several years, we had just a strong growth. And then we started adding services because we couldn't fit in that building. So we added up 3 services, and we were just doing everything we could. I mean, we were working hard, we were praying, we were fasting, we were submitted to God, we were trusting in Him that He would provide and that He would do a work in our hearts and in our lives. And He really did. He did an amazing work here. And it was about 2010 or 2011 we decided it was really time to build a new building. And so we began to do the same thing. We began to pray. We began to fast. We began to raise money. People gave sacrificially. People pledged money that they didn't even have. And I mean, it was just everybody jumping all in. And we had a vision for the building that we now worship in. And it took a couple of years to actually see it come to pass. But in 2012, we opened the doors and we got into the new building, and it was just amazing. We're so happy, and it was the growth had just continued so much that when we built the new building, we couldn't have one service. We thought we'd just have one service, but we ended up having to have 2 services in the new building, and so here we are today, and it's just amazing what God has done. I mean, we've helped churches in Africa buy property and build buildings. We've drilled well in Africa. We've built houses in Mexico, and we oversee churches in Mexico. And we've planted a church in Waco that now has over a couple hundred members. And we have a campus at Gary Job Corps that's going amazing. And it's just incredible. It's incredible what God is doing through the work of PromiseLand. And I tell you that history for a couple reasons. Number one is we want you to see where we came from, and we want you to see the kind of people that we are, and we want you to see the perception that we have of God, that He's calling us to do amazing things that would be impossible without Him. But with Him, it is possible when we lean to Him and we look to Him and we give everything we've got. And I want you to see that picture of where we came from. And I could go on and on about stories, amazing stories, where people stepped out on faith. Like, for example, one guy, he invested in some property and said, God, I'm going to flip this property and sell it. I'm going to give all the profit to the church, to your kingdom, God. This was a prayer he prayed. He went out, got a loan, bought this property, flipped it, and a year later made $90,000 profit. And that $90,000 was the money we used to remodel this church when we first moved into it. And so it's just crazy stuff like that where if humans aren't stepping out on faith, there's nothing for God to use. So He's using us. He's using our efforts and our faith in Him to do a great work. And so that's the one thing, that's the one reason we want to share with you the history. But the other reason we want to share with you this history is we want to let you know that nothing is changing. Like, we haven't got there. We're never going to get there until God fully Himself establishes heaven here on earth. And until that happens, we're continuing to do this. And so we're inviting you to come with us. You might look at our church and say, wow, they've got it all together, they're finished, they're there, they're done, and I can just come kind of hang out on the seats at PromiseLand and be comfortable. And we just want to dispel that myth right now that if you're going to become a member of PromiseLand, that you're going to play a very important part, an integral part of the next season of this church. And we're going to continue to plant new churches all around the area and other countries. I mean, we have a big vision for that. We're going to continue to be a picture of God's hope for this generation. In other words, we're going to continue to help with outreach projects. We're going to continue to disciple one another, and that's a messy process. It's not, being involved with a church family is not just a perfect little picturesque thing. It's challenging, it's sacrificing, it's beautiful. And we're excited about you being a part of it. So that's where we came from. Now let's talk about how we do church, why we do church the way we do, and what's the core message of the church.